Hey everyone, Joe here, Mike here, buildassetsonline.com. We're coming straight to your eardrums and your visual cortexes if you're watching this on YouTube with another episode. And today we're going to be talking about Deep Work by a gentleman named Cal Newport, a book, I believe it's an audiobook as well, Mike. We're going to talk about it and how it applies to online business. So, Mike, why don't you start us off here?
Yeah, so for this video, we're going to go off of a summary or an outline that was made by Samuel Thomas Davies. So we'll leave a link to that if you want to check it out, and we'll be reading some of the stuff that's on there because he summarizes it pretty well. And Joe and I talk about this word kind of, I don't know, we use it a lot, but it's a very important principle that maybe not a lot of people understand. So if you haven't read the book, you should, but we'll give our take on it and how it pertains to online business and what we do and stuff like that. Because I think Cal Newport, he was like an MIT, no, I don't know, he was a professor of some sorts, I believe. And so the book is not just relevant to online business. A lot of people use it for professional stuff, but we're not professional.
Like engineers and whatever, real scientists doing real stuff.
Yeah, we don't do real stuff. So
Yeah.
let's talk about it. Okay. So there's basically three sentences that summarize the book. So the first one is deep work is the ability to focus without distraction on a cognitively demanding task. What do you think about that, Joe?
I think it's definitely important to do, especially at the beginning of when you're first starting online business. I would say before you really get into heavy outsourcing. I think when you get into heavy outsourcing, you kind of have to apply. It might be more difficult to be so focused on one thing when you have a bunch of people working for you. At least that's what I think I found. But you still can apply the deep work principles to certain things. But in terms of having that intense concentration on one task, yeah, I think it's something that a lot of people lack nowadays. And personally, I'm always critical of my ability to do deep work because I feel like I could do it. But, the fact is I'm still very prone to distraction because we live in a distracting world. But when push comes to shove and, I try and give myself deadlines because I think when there is a deadline and there's kind of a fire at the back, what is it? If you have a fire at your back, whatever, however you want to put it, if there's a deadline, then it forces me to get into that deep work mode. But I feel like if I don't have something like, I could do this next week, then it's hard for me to narrow down on it. But I think that ties into the stuff that you talk about, Mike, which is the goal setting and having specific deadlines for certain things you want to accomplish. I think that lends itself pretty well to getting into the deep work mode if you hold yourself accountable to that stuff.
Mm-hmm. And there's a couple things I want to talk about with this first point. So it specifically says deep work is the ability to focus on something without distraction on a cognitively demanding task. That is the most important thing. For examples of what we do that is cognitively demanding, I would say Google Ads, supplier research. This is in the context of a dropshipping store, right?
Yeah.
Google Ads, supplier research, product research, SEO learning, I guess you can say. Those are probably the biggest four. And you need to understand that your current ability, like when you start out, it's your skill level at any of those things is going to be low. But if you actually commit to doing deep work on those things, then it will improve significantly. So just because you start out and maybe you don't come up with a good niche the first time, or maybe your ads aren't so good the first time and you don't have great success, it's not on you. It's on how much deep work have you done on the subject, because eventually you can greatly increase your level of expertise on like those really important things.
Yeah, one thing I think you forgot there, Mike, was that we do, especially more and more regularly, is process creation. I feel like that's the deepest of the deep that we're doing nowadays in terms of creating processes for our our VAs and our employees and stuff. I
Well,
mean,
so
yeah,
well, I'll segue that into the next point of the book. So deep work is for cognitively demanding tasks. Number two, shallow work is non-cognitively demanding, logistical style work, often performed while distracted. So we do deep work to develop a process for someone to come in and do the shallow work for us.
yeah, that's absolutely right. And I think that one thing that's important to know is that shallow work can actually be kind of draining when it comes, like if you do too
Super,
much shallow work. Say that again.
I said super draining.
Yeah. If you do too much shallow work, it's going to inhibit your ability to go in and do the deep work. And I think, if you're not in the position where you're ready to start outsourcing yet, I mean, maybe it's your first go around. It's a great opportunity to really grow that deep work muscle. Because really, at that point, everything is deep work. When you're learning
Yeah,
something new, everything is deep work. It's only when you master it that it becomes shallow work.
yeah, and again, this is all kind of in these things that we've already said. So the key, another key to focus on is deep work. You have to be without distraction, and in the book they also talk about the idea of attention residue. And so what that means is when you're really focused on one particular task and you have to break that focus and move on to another task, it's going to significantly impact your ability to focus on that next task because you have to essentially restart the entire cycle of getting into that focus mode and really zoning in. And so if you're doing things and it requires you to flip back from task to task to task, you're never going to start acquiring a high level of expertise on it because you just can't get into that focus mode.
Yeah, I would say that that's super important. And yeah,
Okay. And so the third summary of the book is that they say deep work is like a superpower in our increasingly competitive 21st century economy. And I mean, I don't know how much we can comment on this, but my interpretation of that and what it kind of makes me think of is in this day and age, we're getting more and more information. There's more and more tools to do stuff. There's just an increase of things being thrown at us that are actually robbing our attention. And
yeah,
so what's going to happen to kids, I mean, we see this with kids and adults and everyone is you're going to be less focused on stuff because you're always getting hammered with a notification. There's your phone ringing, things are going off, and it just keeps breaking your attention and breaking your attention. And if you want to get ahead, not just in online business, but really like no matter what you want to do in the world, this is it. You have to eliminate all distractions, all that type of, and just go deep and focus on the thing you're trying to get expertise at. And it'll put you miles ahead of everyone else because everyone else is distracted in this day and age.
yeah. And I think most people, when they're at their regular jobs, they lose this skill set because they might not need to do that deep work after the first 3 to 6 months of them getting a hang of
Yeah.
what their job is. And I have friends, and I met someone the other day that is kind of in charge of like payments. Like she worked in like the billing department of her company, and the way she was describing her job was it was like very repetitive. And yeah, it requires like a decent level of cognitive ability to be able to work in Excel, evaluate numbers, yada yada yada. But after a while, like it's not going to push you or challenge you in any way. And then that deep work muscle is going to atrophy.
Yeah, I mean, they've been put in that shallow work position by their employers so that the people at the top can do the deep work of like figuring out the next breakthrough in their business, what
Yeah.
products they're going to start bringing in, what type of advertising methods they're going to use, and analyzing data and stuff like that. So if you find yourself in that shallow work position, it probably is very unfulfilling and very soul sucking.
Yeah.
I think I definitely experienced that as well in my
Yeah.
job.
So I think one of the takeaways is to for people, that something that people can take from this and go and apply to their real business is that once you find yourself doing something that's repetitive and that you're doing it and it's not cognitively demanding anymore, that's the time when you need to outsource, because at that time you've mastered it and you need to free yourself up to do different things. And what's kind of interesting about this, Mike, is that in the business world, and I don't know if this necessarily applies to people who are doing engineering, who are doing like real scientific stuff, but I could say, as someone who is looking to own an online business or a business in general, I think at the highest levels, the deep work is really just thinking. Like, I watched something on Warren Buffett like a few months ago, and apparently he just reads for like 12 hours a day, and like that's been like most of his like career, is just reading like for 12 hours a day.
Mm-hmm.
So I think really the more you level up in business, it's more, the deep work is just thinking. And
I think for him, like, everything else is in place to where he just has to say the word, and there's a ripple effect of action that's taken on his behalf.
But in this particular instance, it was like that's what he's always done. It's just he always just reads and then makes like a decision. Like,
I mean, he must not sleep a lot then. Yeah, I think for what I'm just trying to imagine it, like how he would get anything done in that state, unless he's paying someone else to do all of it.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right.
He had to get there at some point. Even if he was reading, even if for the first 5 or 10 years of his career, he was actually going through and like learning the basics.
Yeah,
At that point, you can kind of be at the top and just in looking for the right information to pass along.
No, you're right. At the end of the day, he's not sitting there making the stock trade, like him, not doing any of the actual work himself. And yeah, you're right. It has been that way for a while. I'm very, very sure. But yeah.
I mean, he probably hasn't been doing that for 100% of his career, but at this point, he's like 80. So
right.
Even if he spent 10 years like learning and building that up, it's still 50 years of just taking action.
I'm just saying that's the top level, is that tactician, really, really assessing and thinking and sorting through all the possible moves to come up with the best possible move. And that's when I had my real job. That's literally what I saw all the CEOs do and the top level people at the company. They were just literally in meetings, talking all day, evaluating information, and always doing the deep work. The wheels are always turning in their head, like, what can we do next? How can we become more vertically integrated? How can we save money here? Should we add these new products? Do we remove this from the pipeline? So that's all I was trying to say with that.
Yeah, and one thing I want to add before we move on is in online business, and I guess you kind of alluded to this, like doing deep work and shallow work can be done on the same task. So for an example, at this point, Joe and I do not list any of our own products. We have someone else do it because we've given them a template on how to do it so that it looks like how we want it to look. But for us to go in the beginning, you should go in and you should do these things manually and figure out how you want it to look and do things intentionally so that your product page looks nice and it has different conversion tactics and stuff like that. But after you've done that, you can just, at that point, it's shallow work because then you're just repeating the process. So that's when you should outsource it.
Yeah. I don't want to drag this on too long, but I want to throw in something as you outsource more, and like say for that example, I always sometimes evaluate what my writers are putting out, like in terms of the content sites, but I won't go and check it until there's like 10 or 15 articles ready to go, just because I know it has to do with that attention residue thing. It's like I can open one article and I can it'll kind of take away from everything else I'm doing, and it's really just from one article. But if I take time, all right, I'm dedicating 20 minutes to this, my full attention is going to get this, and I open 10 or 15 articles and I kind of make little notes on what's wrong with each one, it's a lot faster than me evaluating one article at a time. So in terms of reducing your attention residue, I just want to say it's important to really manage that and block out specific times that you're going to do one thing, so you're in the mode of doing that one thing, no matter what it is.
Yeah, and so you actually kind of touched upon um, one of the main ideas of the book, and so I think we actually pretty much covered all these in what we've already shot. So I'll just read through like the 5 big ideas, and we can just add any closing statements to that because we've really touched upon it all. So number 1 is, in order to produce the absolute best stuff you're capable of, you need to commit to deep work. So we talked about that. You have to actually sit down and get intensely focused on it. 2, the ability to quickly master hard things and the ability to produce at an elite level in terms of both quality and speed are 2 core abilities for thriving in today's economy. Number 3, to learn hard things quickly, you must focus intensely without distraction. Number 4, your work is craft, and if you hone your ability and apply it with respect and care, then like skilled wheelwright, you can generate meaning in the daily efforts of your professional life. And number 5, the key to developing a deep work habit is to move beyond good intentions and add routines and rituals to your working life designed to minimize the amount of your limited willpower necessary to transition into and maintain a state of unbroken concentration.
Yeah, those routines and rituals, and this will be the last thing I think we could wrap it up with. I think rituals and routines are extremely important.
Yeah. It goes to what you were just saying, right? You chunk out times that you're going to look at certain things that otherwise your distraction can be broken. So that's like the main thing, is that you need to chunk out these blocks of time that where you can do deep work and just protect it, and then you can set aside other times for when you're going to deal with all the distracting stuff that's going to happen in your life.
Yeah, and I think in a 24-hour period, if you say you had a real job and then you set aside an hour a day to work on your online business, if you do that same hour every day, like say you do it before work, say you do it like 6 to 7 a.m., that's when you're going to work on your online business. If you do that every day without fail, it becomes, and you develop that ritual, develop that habit, it becomes increasingly easier week over week, month over month to do that. Because then it's going to feel weird, like if you don't do that, if you don't take that time to sit down and do that work, you're going to feel a little awkward that day. So,
agreed.
All right, guys, that's about wraps up this episode. Don't forget, buildassetsonline.com/playbook, our free course where we talk about how you can build your online business portfolio from the ground up. And of course, buildassetsonline.com/membership, our private elite fleet group where you can work with us one-on-one, get access to our private Discord, and bi-weekly office hours where we chat with you live and try to help your business as much as possible. We try to provide extremely personalized value to our students, depending on where they're at in their online business, what they're doing. We use all of our knowledge and experience gained over the years to put them in the right direction. So that's about it for this episode, guys. Peace out.
Take it easy.